I'm just interested in exploring a little bit further on page 51, the relationship between demolition and deconstruction and rebuilding. Because we did have, and we're proposing to take out, the words demolition includes deconstruction and rebuilding. I would have expected, from a heritage point of view, something which is demolished or deconstructed and then rebuilt would no longer necessarily be a heritage item. So if we looked at that in terms of maybe the time ball station in Littleton, for example, there is deconstruction has already taken place and the rebuild will hopefully occur. And when that happens, the item will be a reconstruction, but will essentially be a replica rather than a heritage item. And we could relate this to the cathedral, of course, at least in part as well. So I'm quite concerned to see this definition of demolition, including deconstruction to rebuild, been taken out, unless that's picked up somewhere else that gives a similar level of protection, because deconstruction is demolition regardless of what's intended afterwards, and the heritage fabric of the building is destroyed as part of that deconstruction, I would imagine.
Maybe if I can speak to the actual technicalities of the definition, and maybe Brendan about the particulars from a heritage point of view, but the change to that definition was to say that it does include deconstruction, and it's relative to whether it's a substantial or significant element of demolition, but we have taken out the rebuilding aspect of it, so that deconstruction part's actually still within the definition. It's just further up at the start of the definition, but the rebuilding that's a different activity, so that would be need to be reflected, for instance, as an alteration for which consent would be required.
So the protections afforded to a heritage building with these changes in place are not diluted in any way?
The protection, do you mean overall or for a particular type of activity?
So when we look at the changes to wording which are proposed in this document, the effect of those changes doesn't make it any easier to demolish a heritage item, regardless of whether the purpose of demolition is just to demolish or whether it's to reconstruct. All of the protections that were in our original draft remain in place after these changes have occurred.
Yes, that's correct. So the policy for demolition remains the same, to avoid demolition. The activity status remains the same if non-compliant, and essentially the definition has been improved. It's sort of a technical point really to say demolition doesn't actually include rebuilding. So it's still got that strength around that activity.
No, that's fine. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Sorry, just carry on amongst yourselves.
Did you want anything further on that, Andrew? Or because, I mean, we could clarify, there are many instances where careful dismantling of a building, taking the building apart, storing it temporarily, and then putting it back together, you're still using the same fabric of the building. And quite often you have to take linings off, you have to remove windows, you have to take floors up. But so long as you can do that and put back predominantly the original material, obviously you will lose some in that process, we don't regard that as demolition. That's part of getting into the bones of the building to do the repairs. So, and that's something we've been doing. Well, you do it generally with buildings.
Yep. All right. So that adds to a greater level of comfort than I had when I first read this. So that's fine. Yeah. Thank you.
I guess I'm curious where that threshold is. I've seen one proposal over the cathedral where it does actually involve taking it down considerably. So where's that triggered? And then what's built back is actually a replica, not reconstructions.
There's a fine line, obviously, between the percentages that you're dealing with, but most of the time, in my experience, we're dealing with more of the building being retained originally in its original position, and just components that you have to take away in order to strengthen the building or create better servicing of the building internally. So, yeah, each case is different, And the desire obviously would be to minimise the amount of dismantling and extraction of original material and keep everything in place. But sometimes you just have to accept that there will be quite a substantial removal of original material. And I suppose the town hall is a good example of that, where in order to do the groundworks, you've got to take a lot of the building apart, but it's all being stored and it'll all go back in.
Are there any more questions on the heritage? Otherwise, we could move to the trees topic, which is the final topic for Chapter 9.
On with the trees.
Okay. And so Marie's Plisco is going to talk through the key highlights and recommendations. Thanks, Marie.
Yes, we are in recommendation number 79, page 58. Page 58. 58.
Yep.
Recommendation number 79. Actually, the ministers have only one recommendation in this significant trees section, and that is to delete the rules relating to trees in road corridors, parks, reserves, and public open space. We do have this schedule of significant trees, which lists the significant trees only on private land. Now, we have proposed this new rule to protect the trees in the public domain, which are the street trees, the trees in the road corridor, excluding the central city, parks, reserves, and public open space. Now, the reason that the ministers made this recommendation is, first, is that they said there's no threshold significance. Second is it is contrary to the Section 76(4)(a) of the RMA. And third is that the trees are able to be protected by reserve management plans or asset management plans. Now, with their first reason, we have used height as threshold for significance in protecting trees. And according to our council arborists, by the time a tree reaches 6 meters high, a street tree is between 20 and 30 years old, and a park tree is between 17 and 20 years old. Now, this represents a significant investment by the council already in maintaining these trees. It is not the intention of the council to protect the shrub borders or hedges in parks, which may have reached 6 meters in height. So it is proposed in the for the trees in parks, reserves, and open spaces to protect them, those that are greater in 10 meters in height. The council's position is not contrary to Section 76(4)(a) of the RMA, because this rule only applies to what is called the urban environment allotments, and the public spaces, open space, and parks and reserves do not fall under that definition. And also, about the trees that are able to be protected by reserve management plans and asset management plans, many of our parks are not reserves under the Reserve Management Act, so not all have reserve management plans. And even if we do have some reserve management plans, they do not protect all the trees in the parks. It's not enough to protect them. So we consider it appropriate to have tree protection rules in the district plan for an independent decision maker to consider and assess the range of adverse effects for the removal of and damage of trees to any tree greater than 6 meters in height in a road corridor, or 10 meters, excluding central city, or 10 meters in height in a park, reserve, or public open space. So that's the only comment from the ministers that we actually do not accept to delete the rules, as the council's position is to protect these trees. There are other two points that we've made here. I don't know if they're just minor. If you want me to go through them, they're just policy rewording for better clarity, and also that is recommendation number 80. That's the rewording of two policies, and then recommendation 81 is just updating section 32. on page 59
And
Yeah.
16.
and,
And 16.
and 16.
Yeah.
You have any questions on significant trees? Nope.
Okay. That's all of chapter 9. I suppose the only one thing, I don't know if you need to capture that in the set of resolutions, but there was that particular point I made about that little bit of ongoing work to just add those dimensions to the heritage aerial maps. It's not for every single heritage aerial map, but so hopefully that's captured within the overall recommendations, but I just wanted to flag that for your consideration.